Hey guys, welcome back to Builds by Maz. In this video, I'll be giving you some tips for planning out your LVP installation so you can get a great looking floor. Let's get started. All the LVP you'll see in this video is from Flooret. They make high quality flooring at an affordable price, and I've used their LVP throughout my entire home. If you like what's shown in the video and want to see it in person, check out the link below and use code MAXFLORET for 50% off your sample order. Now before getting started, there are a couple of things you want to figure out in advance. The first being which direction you want to run your planks. The general rule is to run them in the same direction as the longest wall of the room. You can do it like this with the planks going along the short edge, but it can make the room feel a little bit smaller. You also need to consider doors, walkways, or furniture, but I generally stick with this option on the left. If you're doing more than just one room, you'll also want to consider your home's layout. Since we have this big stretch from the hallway running all the way through the kitchen, that's the direction we laid our flooring in. This helped it look like a more continuous, cohesive space. The next tip is to make sure you have a really clean and smooth subfloor. If you're removing old carpet, the carpet padding may leave behind a bunch of staples. Be sure to pull all of these up, or if it was glued down, scrape off anything that's remaining. Either way, once that's done, I always thoroughly sweep and then vacuum the subfloor. Any dirt or debris can cause your flooring to lay unevenly. On that note, you also want to check for any low or high spots on the subfloor using a long level. If you do find a low spot like this, you'll need to fill it in using a patch and level kit. It's really important to have a totally flat subfloor if you want an optimum LVP installation. If you want more detail on anything you see in this video, you can check out my channel where I have longer flooring videos that go in depth into all these topics. But once your subfloor is fully prepped, you'll need to decide if you want to use an underlayment. It's basically a thin layer that goes between the subfloor and the LVP, and it offers a lot of benefits, but the most important is moisture protection. You'll almost always want this if you have a concrete subfloor, to protect from moisture coming up through the concrete. There are tons of underlayment options, which vary in material, price, and quality, but they all install essentially the same way. Just roll it out and cut it to size. It's pretty simple and doesn't add much time to your flooring install. Flooret's LVP does come with a pre-attached underlayment on the underside of every plank. I still recommend using a separate underlayment over concrete, but if you're installing on a wood subfloor, you can skip the underlayment and install straight onto your subfloor. Another tip is to always have 2 or 3 boxes of LVP open and laid out at one time. That way you have a wide variety of patterns to choose from, and you're not repeating any designs too close to each other. Now before starting, you need to measure out the full length of your area, so you know how many individual planks will fit inside the room. So in this example, let's assume you have a 4-foot wide space, and each plank is 6 inches wide. Well, in that case, you can fit 8 planks perfectly. But now let's assume that your room is actually 4 feet 1 inches wide. Well, now you can still fit your 8 full-size planks, but you'll have this 1-inch strip at the very bottom, and that's what you really want to avoid. It won't look right and it will stand out. So in this situation, what you would need to do is before beginning, you would cut off a couple inches off the first row, and that's represented by this red line here. So if you cut off a couple inches, then when you're laying your planks, everything will be shifted upwards. So now in this new scenario, our first row is going to be a partial plank, but it'll be over half a plank wide, and the same with the bottom one. So now we've got 2 medium width rows on the first and last row, which will look a lot better than the 1-inch strip that we would have had originally. With your prep and planning done, you can now start laying the LVP. Make sure you have the wider groove side of the planks facing outwards towards the room. I always like starting in the top left corner of my area, and be sure to use 1/4-inch spacers along the tops and sides. The LVP expands and contracts with temperature changes, and so these spacers leave a little gap around the room so the flooring can expand without buckling. One of the best parts about LVP is how easy it is to install. The planks all click together, and when you finish a row, the boards are easy to cut to size. Most of the time you can't fit a full-size plank on the end, so we'll need to trim it off right here. But you can't just cut this section. The reason is because we need to maintain the grooved edge to fit into the corresponding spot on the previous plank. So what you'll need to do is flip the board around so that the tongue is facing the opposite direction away from you. Line it up against the wall, making sure to use your 1/4 inch spacer. Use the speed square and align it with the end of the previous row's plank. You don't need any special tools to make the cut. All it takes is a sharp razor blade. Hold your speed square tightly and score the LVP 3 or 4 times in the same area using firm pressure. Then you can simply snap the board and it'll make a clean cut along your score line. Flip the cut piece back over and you can fit it into place. Once you begin the second row, you'll need to start paying attention to where the seams end. You want to maintain at least 8 inches of space between seams of adjacent rows. With LVP flooring, you want to maintain a randomized pattern of seams with good spacing in between all of them. What you want to avoid is having seams line up like this. This is more for tiles or bricklaying, and you don't want this kind of pattern with LVP. And as I mentioned, you want 8 inches or more of space between seams of adjacent rows. Having the seams too close together looks weird, but also leads to a weaker floor, so be sure to avoid this. Having these randomly spaced out seams will lead to a good looking, strong floor. For example, if I started this row with a full-size plank, the end would line up with the seam from the first row. So to avoid that, I'm going to trim off a section of the first plank so that it ends up between these two seams here. Of course, make sure to trim off from the side against the wall, but now I've got a more randomized seam pattern. Another tip I'll show you is how to lay flooring around door jambs. The best method is actually to undercut this so you can slide the flooring underneath it. Using a flush cut saw on a scrap piece of flooring, you can cut into the door trim and it'll end up being the perfect height. I prefer using a multi-tool to make the job a little quicker, but the end result is the same. Once it's done, you can remove the cut piece and you should be able to slide your flooring right underneath it. This will give you a clean, professional looking finish. Lastly, I'll go over how to install transition pieces. This is called T-molding, and it's good when you're moving to something like carpet. Measure the width of your door frame or other space where you'll be installing the transition piece. Cut it to size, and you'll glue down the bottom strip to the subfloor using strong construction adhesive. Place it into your door frame or other transition area, and then weight it down for 24 hours until the adhesive cures. Then you can line up the upper piece with the grooves in the lower piece and press down until it clicks into place. Flooret's transition pieces perfectly match their flooring colors, so you can get professional looking finishes. Following these tips can help you get really great results just like this, even if you've never laid any flooring before. As a reminder, everything you're seeing here is Flooret's LVP, and you can find it in the link below. I hope you enjoyed these tips, and if you want full in-depth tutorials, you can check out these videos here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.